Ransomware is a practice hackers use to lock up computer systems and demand a payment from victims for their release. Data on ransomware attacks varies widely, and estimates are difficult to make because many attacks are never made public or reported to law enforcement. But security officials agree, the problem is rapidly getting worse. These attacks are increasing in frequency, victim losses are skyrocketing, and hackers are shifting their targets away from data-rich companies to providers of key public needs, such as hospitals, transportation, and food. What's causing the current acceleration in frequency and scope of these attacks? There are at least 4 main factors. First, victims continue to make cybersecurity mistakes, like clicking on phishing links or failing to keep company software updated.
These criminal groups are still finding it too easy to exploit weak cybersecurity or failure to execute cybersecurity best practices.
A ransomware attack on Colonial Pipeline forced the 5,500-mile pipeline to shut down for 6 days, spurring a run on gasoline along parts of the East Coast. Investigators believe hackers were able to break into the company's computer systems by logging into an out-of-use VPN profile that lacked two-factor authentication. The public library in Brownsburg, Indiana, found themselves in a similar situation in 2017.
We believe the hackers came in through our card catalog, and which is where you look for books. It's open to the public, so it's an open venue.
The attack locked Robinson and her staff out of email, cardholder information, and their entire library catalog of over 100,000 items. The library paid half of a Bitcoin, approximately $1,300 at the time, to regain access. Second, ransomware attacks have become very lucrative for hackers. In the past several weeks alone, JBS, whose meat plants were temporarily knocked offline by cybercriminals, and Colonial Pipeline have paid many millions of dollars to get their systems back up and running.
Considering the consequences of potentially not bringing the pipeline back on as quickly as I possibly could, I chose the option to make the ransom payment.
Both the Colonial Pipeline and JBS ransom payments were made using cryptocurrency, which has a reputation for being hard to track. But an announcement by the Justice Department that they'd recovered about $2.3 million of Colonial's initial ransom demonstrates investigators' growing technical ability in some cases to disrupt the financial infrastructure that has enabled these ransomware gangs to demand large sums.
The sophisticated use of technology to hold businesses and even whole cities hostage for profit is decidedly a 21st century challenge. But the old adage, follow the money, still applies.
Cryptocurrency isn't the only reason ransomware attacks have become more lucrative. Some hackers are now utilizing double extortion tactics, in which they steal sensitive data from their victims before encrypting it, and then threaten to publish that information if victims refuse to pay. Third, hacking groups have reinvented the process through which criminal networks extort victims. Ransomware as a service is a practice in which hacking networks can sell or lease their ransomware software to other criminal groups to carry out attacks. Those affiliate groups then share the proceeds with the hackers who developed it. DarkSide, the criminal group linked to the Colonial Pipeline hack, works in this way. And finally, according to U.S. officials and cybersecurity researchers, the majority of these hacks are coming from Russia and Eastern Europe, where, security experts say, the line between criminal hacking groups and state-backed cyber operations can be murky, as governments often tolerate criminal activity as long as it is targeted overseas, and sometimes even recruit hackers from those groups to carry out their own objectives. Following a highly anticipated summit between President Biden and Vladimir Putin in Geneva, the Russian leader said he agreed to start consultations on cybersecurity and denied that Moscow was involved in any cyber attacks. At a separate news conference, President Biden said he presented Mr. Putin with a list of critical infrastructure that he said should be off limits.
Responsible countries need to take action against criminals who conduct ransomware activities on their territory. So, we agreed to task experts in both our countries to work on specific understandings about what's off limits and to follow up on specific cases that originate in other countries, in either of our countries.
So what can individuals and companies do now to better protect themselves? Goldstein said CISA is focused on helping ensure that organizations understand basic steps that they need to adopt to protect themselves, like running up-to-date software and using multi-factor authentication. He hopes the intrusions at Colonial Pipeline and JBS serve as a wake-up call for organizations across the country.
The first barrier to increasing adoption of cybersecurity best practices is ensuring awareness among business management and business leaders to make sure that when companies are deciding where to invest and which risks to invest in driving down, cybersecurity and the risk of ransomware attacks is seen as a top priority risk.
Robinson said that after they recovered from the ransomware attack on the library, they implemented many security changes to prevent future attacks, like reworking their server backup system.
We made sure that our catalog was on a firewall. We have a product called Silence that's running that's watching for not just known viruses, but unusual activity.
Following the ransomware attack on Colonial Pipeline, President Biden said ransomware was a growing problem in need of a global response.